Hello, welcome everybody to Navigating Misinformation in the Digital Age. My name is Adam Wadenius, and with me is Emily Bond. We put together this presentation for y'all today to start to think about the concept of concepts of dis and misinformation in the digital.
$20. So there's 10. What's 10 plus 5? What's
Coming.
more? What's 5 more? 20. So say here's 20.
There it is. All right. Okay, so we're putting this together to start to think more in depth about certain concepts related to media literacy as a whole here on campus. And so we had a previous discussion last semester on the general concept of media literacy, and we had some time to talk through some of the different ways that we can encourage and start to advocate more for media literacy here on campus and CRC. And so this particular discussion is going to highlight some more specific points to that overall discussion. And I think that this is going to work very well with some of the discussions we've been having over the last couple of days, in particular with the AI Institute that took place yesterday. And of course, looking through some of the different some of the different PD offerings this break as well. There's a lot that seems to jive with what we're talking about here. So it's very good that we're starting to entertain this conversation of media literacy more fully. Emily and I have some things to share with you today and some games to play and some things to think about with respect to the topics of dis and misinformation. So I'm going to go ahead and get us going with the slide presentation. And we're going to start out with just some simple definitions. And this may be very straightforward. Hopefully it will be. But if you all are having questions, of course, as we're going along, feel free to chime in, pop your hand up, put something into the chat box. And we can answer questions as we go. A lot of this may seem like very straightforward information. And I think it is, because a lot of us have to, of course, deal with a lot of dis and misinformation throughout the course of our lives, whether it be not just perhaps in the classroom, but of course also, hey, welcome. But also with respect to our interactions online with social media and other forms of digital culture. We're going to start with misinformation, of course, refers to false or misleading information that is spread without the intention to deceive. It can be the result of mistakes, misunderstandings, or the lack of accurate information. And so the idea with misinformation, of course, is that we're getting information that is not true. However, this information is misleading without intent. So this can be accidental. This can be somebody sees something on their Facebook page and instantly believes that that information is true just because somebody posted it there and it looks official and it has perhaps maybe even a website that's connected to something legitimate, like a particular publication or magazine. So they forward that on to their friends. And of course, unknowingly, perhaps if they haven't done their research, they've now forwarded that misinformation onto somebody else who might also take that as truth and move forward with it. Of course, on the other side of that is disinformation. And disinformation is the intentional spread of false or misleading information with the purpose of deceiving others. And so this, of course, involves a more deliberate effort to manipulate public opinion, to create confusion, and also to achieve personal goals, to sabotage, and to, of course, deceive. And so this is purposeful, willful, and malicious. And so as we start to navigate the space of digital media, as all of us do, it's important for us to start to think about how these two kind of work with one another, how we can start to parse out the idea of what is disinformation versus what is misinformation, and start to make more informed decisions about the kinds of media content that we engage with throughout the course of our daily lives, our work lives, et cetera. Now, there's a number of different kinds of mis and disinformation that we'll start to go through as we kind of traverse along this discussion. However, if you start to look into the kinds of more structured analysis of these concepts, there's a general kind of sense of breaking dis and misinformation into 7 key types. So we're going to go through and talk about some of the 7 key types of dis and misinformation, and we're going to start to think about how they operate as a kind of sliding scale from potentially harmless to very malicious and harmful. And as we do that, we'll also take a look at some different examples and start to think about some of the ways that these examples have affected maybe us personally, or maybe some of the ways that we have seen how some of these examples have affected culture in particular ways. So. The first kind or type of disinformation is satire or parody. So a satire or a parody is a very good way to critique and to bring some sort of a level of criticism to a particular topic. For example, newspapers like The Onion or television shows like The Daily Show do a very good job of satirizing contemporary popular forms of media. And those forms, of course, in order to satirize, they have to take part in the very thing that they're satirizing. So if you wanted to, of course, make fun of a newspaper like The Onion, you would have to create your newspaper very much like a quote unquote real legitimate news source, newspaper, and stage it as though it were a real thing. Now, sometimes satire or parody, of course, is not well understood by the audience. Sometimes people can be mistaken about what they see on things like The Onion or television shows like The Daily Show, or even television shows like Saturday Night Live to a certain degree, which have a historical component to them with their news reporting and parodying news reporting and parodying popular figures in history. Hey, welcome. And so when we think about,
yes,
yep, that's us.
You're in the right spot.
Yeah.
We've got a bunch of people online too, so we're using both.
Yeah, we're dueling it up. Yeah.
The screen. Yeah, welcome. Thank you.
And so in popular television shows like Saturday Night Live, for example, there's a certain historical quality to them. Over time, when, for example, you make fun of somebody like, who was the president that fell down the stairs on Air Force One? I think it was Biden, but it was before that, it was somebody else. And Chevy Chase used to make fun of him on the show to the point where everybody now thinks that president's just the hugest klutz in history. And so there's a kind of historicizing factor to certain kinds of television shows as well. But when we're thinking about satire or parody, this has the potential to misinform, but it is not certainly a malicious intent. And you think about an interesting example. This is former FIFA Vice President Jack Warner. He was indicted in 2015 for alleged corruption, and he released a video talking about his innocence. And as part of his way to prove he was innocent, he held up an article from what was called, a publication called The Onion, which is, of course, a satirical newspaper. And he said something to the effect of, well, if FIFA's so bad, why is America trying to continually get into have the World Cup in America? And he cites this article that's from The Onion that says, FIFA frantically announces the 2015 Summer World Cup in the US, which isn't a thing. And it's, of course, meant to be not malicious, but funny. And so this particular occasion misinformed this particular individual.
James said it was Gerald Ford falling down, I think.
Gerald Ford, yes, good call. Thank you for that. I always forget the name of the president in that situation. All right, so moving on from satire or parody, we have false connection. And false connection is taking something and perhaps an image and connecting it to something that is not necessarily true about that image. So for example, when COVID was going on, COVID-19, there were a number of different news outlets that were using pictures to misinform the public. And the way they would do that was they would take pictures from a particular perspective. If you look at this first picture here on the left of the crowd, and you take a look at that, it looks very much like they are not social distancing. And these types of pictures would run with captions on them in certain types of social media posts or on even certain legitimate certain news outlets. That would say, caption that with, hey, look at these individuals are not social distancing. This is a problem. And this would go viral online and people would say, look, there's certain people not social distancing. And this would, of course, cause a commotion. However, if you look at this photo from just a different perspective, right? And that's all we're doing here. This is film 101 too. It's the first thing I tell my students when we get into my film classes. Film is manipulation. That's the first thing a filmmaker wants to do, manipulate you. And it starts with the image. And of course, we can see here how this particular photographer has manipulated this image. These people are social distancing. However, if you shoot them from the front and you use a certain type of lens to flatten it out, like say a longer lens, you're going to create that flattening effect. It's going to look like perhaps these people are not social distancing. So the captions of, hey, look at these people not social distancing is a false connection being made. Misleading content is very much prevalent in things like advertising. There's an interesting video that was going around Reddit for a little while about the Snickers bar and how to rebrand the Snickers bar in different ways. And it's illustrating some of the techniques that advertisers use to be able to manipulate us as consumers. So this particular person found 5 different ways to remarket a Snickers bar. So with the first one here on the left, we have Snickers Slim. What you do is you take the Snickers bar, you cut it in half, and then on the packaging, you write 2 times, right? So now you've got twice the product, you've got 2 products. But it's also 126 calories or what have you, or 225 calories. And that, of course, cuts the calorie count in half. You don't have to say 250 calories, you can just say 2 times 125 on the other side. Most people may not really see it and think, oh, hey, this is a slimmer version of a Snickers bar. You can continue that line of thinking here with Snickers Kids. Well, let's highlight in Snickers Kids, it's got 100% real milk in it. I mean, it does. It goes into making the chocolate. It's got natural ingredients. It's got things that kids, that you package it with a little thing on the side that says, packaged with things kids will enjoy. Well, certainly kids enjoy chocolate and candy, but it looks funner, right? It's not necessarily a candy bar now. It's perhaps a protein snack, like you see here with Jolt. Jolt is emphasizing it's got electrolytes and vitamins. Well, it's a food product. It does have vitamins. To what degree those vitamins are necessary or helpful, or how much of them there is in there, who knows? But it's got vitamins and electrolytes, so this will give you that little jolt, and as an energy bar might want to. Snickers Pro, it's got 8 grams of protein. It's got the muscle hand on there, right? Snickers Pro, it sounds tough. I can get this, I get my protein, I get my workout in, right? But at the same time, you're also not considering the levels of sugar and all the other stuff that goes into this, and the kind of protein you're consuming in this instance. And then, of course, highlighting Snickers Naturals. Well, Snickers are made with natural ingredients. There are peanuts in it. There's that counts as a natural ingredient. And so, again, with this kind of content, largely in advertising, you're seeing how we're being misled through packaging, through color, presentation, and affect. If we move into false contexts, of course, take a particular image or something going on and they put it in a different context, or they highlight it in a context that is out of what we are assuming is actually taking place. So this is something that is very kind of prominent in the news over the last couple of, I think maybe a couple of days or a week or so ago. We had a bunch of different individuals who were burning photos of the Ayatollah on Facebook and, of course, Instagram and other kinds of social media apps. And these were being captioned and being talked about as taking place in Iran. Now, over the course of this last week, I've actually started to see more and more reports of individuals who are in Iran doing something similar to this. So there are verified reports of that happening. But when some of these reports were first starting to come about, this picture was floated around as a young woman of Iranian descent in Iran making this, burning this photo and lighting a cigarette on it. And this young woman, it turned out, was not in Iran. She's actually Canadian. She's of Iranian descent, of course, but lives in Canada, and was at the time doing this in Canada. You can see by what's going on in the background, the building was particularly a kind of a standout building that people recognize as not being in Iran, but being in Canada. And so very quickly, this was corrected, and people found the right way to talk about this. But again, taking this out of its context, saying, no, this is a young woman in Iran, when of course she's not in Iran, she's in Canada, that can be incendiary, especially as this floats around different types of social media platforms. And as we're going along here, hopefully you're starting to also see that we're getting perhaps more and more malicious with what's going on here. We're starting with parodies and perhaps just some misinformation, but as we go along this scale, we start to see how we slide more towards the purposeful, the deceitful, and the disinformation. And so with imposter content, this is certainly a good example.
Let's ask a question.
Oh, question time. Yeah, let's
Is
do
the
it.
Snickers thing misleading, or is it just different perspectives? Those ads highlighted different aspects of the food product. How do you distinguish between advertisement and disinformation?
I mean, that's, I think, an important point that we have to do individually. I think it also comes down to when I look at a Snickers bar, what's my perspective on the initial Snickers bar of the thing with chocolate and nuts and nougat and all of that kind of wrapped up. And when I look at the total package on the background of all of the information, I can make a decision about what that Snickers bar is. For those little instances, what we're seeing there, of course, there is a level of manipulation and deceit there, because the individuals, while it's on the back, we can freely choose to look at the back. That's not being highlighted. What is being highlighted, of course, is what's on the front. What they want you to know about it oftentimes is, I mean, similar to the thing when you're thinking about terms and agreement. How many of you, I mean, it's the same old kind of example, but how many of you read the terms of agreement when you are filling out a form in doctor's office or online or anywhere else, right? I think your question highlights that need where, for us as individuals, to kind of further look into that thing and look beyond just the superficial aspects of it. It's a great point. Continuing with imposter content. With imposter content, we're seeing how, again, we're getting more malicious with this. Imposter content involves potentially.
We're going to Rob's house. They didn't have the good ice.
You good?
I got you one.
Involves potentially recreating certain types of websites, creating duplicate sites. Such a thing happened during the French election just a while back. There was a sophisticated duplicate version of a Belgian newspaper called Le Soir that published a false article, and it claimed that French presidential candidate Emmanuel Macron was funded by Saudi Arabia or being funded by Saudi Arabia. And this is one of the headlines. And of course, if you're looking at the website and actually taking a look at the web bar above you, when you're clicking on certain types of links, you can see that there's a web address that has specific information that points you to a certain website. Now, this one had very, very sophisticated kind of look to it that made it look as though it was like Le Soir on the kind of front of it. But again, if we turn the Snickers bar over and look to the back of it and we look to the bar at top, we can start to see there's discrepancies between the actual website address and the website address of the imposter content. And so many people went to this website. It was being circulated to various places. And somebody sends you a link with a picture and you click on it. How many of you actually go and look at that website then to see, did it take me to a legitimate website, or am I just going to some various place on the internet? And if it's taking me to the place where I think I'm going, right? Oh, this is a link to Le Soir. I'm not going to question that. I'm not going to that link to Le Soir if it looks like Le Soir when I pick it up, when it comes through. So this kind of disinformation is, of course, purposeful and meant to manipulate us, and can be, of course, and often is, of course, just as damaging as the stuff we see with something like potentially satire or parody or some of the other forms we've looked at. Manipulated content is when somebody takes an existing piece of content and then manipulates it, changes it into something different, and adds to it or takes away from it to of course, change what its initial kind of state was. And so with deep fakes, we've seen a number of these in the kind of the contemporary space. We're seeing a lot more of them in much more sophisticated ways. When we think about Kamala Harris, this was a deep fake of her stuttering her words. This was done during the election. It was put in a tweet by Elon Musk and sent out, which he later said was he was just parodying her, which is fine. That's a thing. But initially, he sent it out as though it was not a parody, that it was an actual example of her slurring her words at a conference. And it was used to then go out on different social media platforms as Kamala Harris is drunk in public, she's unfit to serve the country, and so on and so forth. Vladimir Zelensky as well was the victim of a deep fake that showed him surrendering to Russian forces. So these kinds of things, again, in the hands of people who aren't as media savvy or who consume too much media or a lot of media, these kinds of things, they can wash over you and you potentially lose yourself one night while you're sitting in your bed and all of a sudden looking at your phone, you believe this video of Zelensky surrendering is an actual taking place. And last, we have fabricated content. Fabricated content is completely fabricated content. So something that is completely made expressly to disinform. And over the course of the last, again, couple of weeks, with the U.S. forces capture of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro, there was a lot of AI-generated images and out-of-context visuals that were being used to showcase his capture. And so I have some images here, and for the folks in the room, and even for those of you who are online, if you want to start to take a guess at some of this, we can start to go around and think about just want to see if you can tell. Some of it, when we're thinking about fabricated content, might be easy to parse out, but these images here, I think, look fairly similar to one another. If we kind of go along here, can we tell which one is a real image or which one is a fake image or which one, et cetera? So in this top left corner here, what do y'all think here in the room?
Real. Looks real.
That one looks real? Okay. I'm seeing some people about on the far right. What about the far right one? What are people thinking about the far right one? You said that one's not real? So some in the room say the far right one is not real. Okay, well, let's go to the one next to the far right one here in the middle. What do we think about that one?
Saying that.
You're gonna say no to that one too?
Really?
Well, it looks very similar to the one right next to you. It's got the same kind of a tracksuit on, right? Yeah, and then we've got the one down here at the bottom. What about that one? Is that one real or fake? Yeah, it's a fake, yeah. Yeah? Yeah? Okay. Yeah, this one has a very prominent kind of flash to it. Usually you don't get that kind of a good kind of a lighting scenario in this kind of a quality of a photo. Same thing with this one here. You can kind of see how that's the bottom one on the left, the middle one here with the Nike suit. Those are two fake images, and these are the ones that were legitimate. The one on the end and the one up on the top here. Yeah. So, I mean, for the most part, we got it right. And we also can start to learn from this because as this gets better, which it will, it's going to get better. It's only going to get, we're going more and more down the rabbit hole. We'll start to lose these little differences of the little highlight of shadow here, or the little insignia of the Nike logo here. It's kind of ridiculous. He isn't wearing a Nike suit, right? So, and we'll be able to then start to take those kinds of things out and right, and manipulate them even further.
Let's do it.
And there it is. And see, isn't that an interesting thing too? Because this type of a thing cannot just be used for people to spread dissemination or disseminate misinformation, disinformation, but it can be used by corporations. Absolutely. It wouldn't be a genius idea for Nike to let this slip this out, right, as a piece of product placement for people to believe it. Oh, Maduro's wearing a Nike sweater. Yeah, that's incredibly it's an effective strategy to use, and I don't think we should be as naive to say that corporations won't do such a thing. All right, I want to take it some time here. For those of you who are online, you can start to go, and maybe we can give everyone a couple of minutes maybe online to do this and start to kind of go through this. And yeah, post a link into the chat. I wanted to just kind of do a little bit of a game here. It's called the bad news game. And this is a good example of the concept of post-truth. Is there anyone online, if you want to type this into the chat, or here in the room as well, can anyone tell me what well, I wrote it on the board, so excuse me. I meant to actually highlight that, so never mind, I won't do that. I was going to put the little bar there and then ask the question. But okay, for those of you who don't know what post-truth is, post-truth rises as objective facts become less influential than personal beliefs and emotion. So post-truth is this phenomenon where truth, reason, rational thinking become less important to how I feel about something. Beliefs and emotions start to take over. So I start to become more likely to believe what I feel and what I believe about something, much more so than what somebody else is telling me from perhaps an advanced perspective, somebody who's in education or somebody who has an advanced understanding of a particular thing or life knowledge or those kinds of things. Or as we've been talking about over the course of the last couple of days, different forms of knowledge, ancestral intelligence, those kinds of things. So in our contemporary society, this notion of post-truth, I think, is something we need to start to take a look at and start to, of course, here on a college campus, where our motives is inspiring young learners and to think creatively, to of course, to go out and to follow their academic visions. It becomes more and more important for us to start to think about this concept and to think about what we believe and how we believe what we believe. So it goes back into some of the stuff we were talking about too in the AI Institute yesterday about metacognition and things of that nature. So this is a game called Bad News. There's a link posted in the chat, and we can do this here in the room if we want all together. And then online, you can start to do this as well. And I'll go through and start to maybe model some of this with you here. So click off this. Let me stop this share for a second, see if I can now share this. All right, since we have just a couple of us in the, it's up. All right, quick. All right, so what I think we can do in the room is we can just go around and each make a decision. And what goes on with this is you start this this engine going, and the goal is to get as many followers as you can on social media. Now, what also is going on is it's going to gauge your credibility in terms of the statements you're making and the kinds of information you're putting forth on social media, right? So here in the room, let's just go through and we can start to see if we can move this.
Hear us, or does it have to be back?
See, this is the thing that when it starts to be able to hear us, that's going to be great because then we'll be able to just, I mean, it probably has, there's probably some sort of a capability already for that, right? But we don't have that set up.
But we'll click on it.
Yeah, but we can click and we can just kind of go through here. And if you want to play along online on your own and start to set your own score to see how many followers you can get before your credibility completely busts. We can do this for a couple minutes to see what people are thinking about this. But and this is also going to be instructive too, as kind of thinking about how we navigate social media. So what's your name again?
Beethoven's?
Say it again.
Beethoven's?
Beethoven's?
Yes.
And then, I'm sorry, I forgot your name again.
Eddie?
Eddie, that's right. Yeah. So Beethoven's and Eddie, do you want to play too? We can go around.
That's good.
Yeah. Okay. So we can just go back and forth if you want and answer questions, right? So we'll start with Beethoven's here. The first one. Hi there. Good to see you. What do you want to respond? Hey or who are you?
Or
Who are you? All right. Eddie, what do you think? Oh, My job is to guide you in your quest becoming a disinformation and fake news tycoon. Okay. So what do you want to do, Eddie? Do you want to post a frustrated tweet or are you not sure? You're not sure. Well, don't worry. It's perfectly safe. Nothing you can do in this game affects you in the real world. So let's go ahead and post a frustrated tweet. Let's see. This is an interesting one. This government is a complete and utter failure. Hashtag resign losers. You want to tweet this or something different? Oh, wait, we didn't go back. Yeah, sorry. You want to tweet that one? Let's tweet that one. Okay, now we can go back to Eddie. Look, your constructive criticism of the government got you a few. Oh, we got 8 followers for that. Hey, so hey, our brains are learning a little something here, huh? If I put out something a little bit incendiary, oh, potentially I could get a couple of followers here. All right, so are we back to Eddie now? What do you think? Start to start. What do I do next? What do I do next? Okay, look at your meter. People don't find you very credible. To gain some real influence, you need to raise your credibility. Well, let's ask, but how? I'm going to show you. To gain notoriety, we can start by borrowing somebody else's credibility. That sounds like something I could potentially do. This is only the digital world we're talking about here. I'm not talking about the real world, right? All right, so what do you think you want to do? Do you want to fake one or you want to impersonate somebody? Fake one, fake and equate. That's always a good one to do. Yeah. Oh, we're going to do Donald J. Trump. There's us. So we've tweeted out by executive order, I'm renaming Canada to the North Dakota. Hashtag you got annexed. That's a very clever tweet by the, oh, there, I look at our credibility meter starting to highlight a little here on the left side a little bit. It's starting to buzz a little. It's interesting. All right. What do you think, Eddie? We tweeting or we not tweeting? Not this one? Okay.
Too unbelievable.
Too unbelievable. All right. Meteorite alert from NASA. Meteorite alert. Large space object set to hit US West Coast. Be safe. What do you think? The next one? All right. These are getting juicy. Nickelodeon, do they exist anymore? We are announcing the immediate and permanent cancellation of SpongeBob SquarePants. Hashtag I'm ready. That would be incendiary. The movie's about to come out, isn't it? I just saw that. You want to do this one? Yeah? Yeah? All right. Let's tweet this. We're going to tweet it. Should scare the hell out of SpongeBob's fan base. Nice. But see, now look at this. Did you notice Nickelodeon's slightly different username? See how Nickelodeon has the 0 in there with a kind of a slash through it? You have the same thing going on here with Donald Trump here. You can, we passed by that one, but you see they had the umlaut over the O. So now we're starting to think, now this is why this is instructive as we start to go. We can play and have some fun, but now it's telling us, hey, look at the name on the Twitter account. See how it's misspelled or if it's not verified or this or that. Now you're not getting the right, it's got a good picture. It says Donald Trump, but it's not an official Twitter, right? So now as the game continues on, got it. We can start to check some reactions. And as we go through, people are going to start to forward us reactions. And as we do that, there's going to give us opportunities. Do you want to forward this tweet? Do you want to retweet this, or et cetera? And as we start going that, we're going to start seeing our followers get up, but our credibility is going to start to go along because as the game goes, at a certain point, you tweet out something that's not credible, and you're right. So this, I think, is instructive because it's fun. It gives us that little kind of dopamine rush that we like when we're checking our socials and stuff like that. But it also helps us to train a little bit about what to look for when we're doing things like social media and we're involving ourselves in these kinds of processes. Great. So I think what we want to do is transition now to start to think about some of the different strategies that we can use to help us do that from a day-to-day kind of a moment to moment, really, because we're inundated with so much imagery and media throughout the course of our experience. Emily's going to talk to us about some strategies that we can start to implement. So I'll set this back up with.
Yeah, back to the presentation.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you. So I think what I want us to kind of shift and think about is when we're looking at misinformation and disinformation, it starts to come home in a lot of ways, right? Both for our own information consumption, but also for our loved ones, right? I don't know if you have a family member like I do who will click on everything that they see on their social and believe it, face value, no context. But then what I think it really comes back to is our students and in our classrooms and what kind of support are we giving them and tools are we giving them to help them navigate this information environment where we know that they're going to run across misinformation, disinformation, AI generated content that maybe they need to dig into to understand what's behind it or where it's coming from. And so what I'm going to take us to is a little bit more techniques, and then we're going to look at some examples And again, you start to apply these techniques. So the technique that I'm going to share with you is the SIFT method. It's developed by Mike Caulfield, who is at Washington State University and has done a lot of sharing with information evaluation. And so this SIFT technique has you do a couple of actions. And I think for a lot of us who are informed information users who are being maybe a little bit more aware of some of the pitfalls of misinformation that we can run into. These are techniques that we may do already ourselves, but I'm just going to start to name them and talk a little bit about how we employ these techniques. So the SIP technique has 4 stages: stop, investigate the source, find better coverage, trace claims, quotes, and media to the original content. And it's really designed to help us figure out what are we looking at and where did it come from and can we trust the individual source? And I think I want to kind of bring this in the context of our students. I know that when I work with students, many of them have navigated the digital environment their whole life, right? But in maybe earlier educational experiences, they have been taught to kind of look at a lot of the surface level things of information sources. So Adam gave the example of the marketing, right? Where you have the packaging that looks really official and it's highlighting something of benefit to the consumer. And I think a lot of our students have been kind of taught in some of their past experiences to look at packaging, right? So the names on a website, the domain, the trappings of an academic journal article that might look official, even just the titles, right, that are applied to some things, or credentials that a person lists behind their name. And so I think what I'm trying to encourage us to do is to dig a little deeper. Look at that back side of the packaging, if you will, and see what is there. So let's talk about stop. So this is kind of straightforward, but I think this is something that I know I even need to practice when I'm consuming news or scrolling through social or whatever, is like a lot of news media and things that are posted on social media are designed to grab your attention, and they grab your attention through incendiary language or through a strong headline that's going to like shock and pull you in. And so I think that's something that we need to kind of key into, the things that are making us react. And when that happens, immediately our I don't know, spidey senses, right? Should tingle a little bit, that we should think, okay, this is something that I need to pay attention to, that I'm having this reaction, and where is it coming from? And is this something that they're trying to draw out of me, either through purposeful manipulation or use of language, or is this, what is this reaction coming from? So we want to look at the source of information and try to start to understand what their reputation is. And some of us who maybe have had a little bit more experience looking at different information sources, we might be able to assess reputation pretty quickly, but our students a lot of times are building those skills as their knowledge of a field, their knowledge of the world, right, is growing. All right, stop. Did I do it right? Yes, I did in right order. So investigate the information or news source before you read it. So this is something that we call lateral reading, and I think a lot of us do this maybe instinctively. We might click out of the source and look up something about who that person is or what the news organization is. And so it's especially when we're coming up across sources of information where we're not familiar with the organization ourselves, Google News might have a random news source that we haven't heard of before, or something on social media might have a title of a journal being quoted, and I don't know what that journal is, and so I need to go look up, what is this publication? Is it legitimate? So one of the things that we want to do is investigate. We'll look at that. We'll practice that in a second. The F is find better coverage. So when we're looking at news, right? So we don't want to just necessarily take the first news source that we're consuming at face value, but maybe comparing it, looking at other news sources and see what the coverage is. Maybe finding some trustworthy news sources that we feel like, okay, I can go and validate against this. If they're agreeing, if they're reporting the same thing or similar information, then I know that this is probably something trustworthy. So we want to practice kind of verify and taking more than one, taking a step to make sure you're getting more in-depth coverage and more detail about the source. Stop me if there's anything you want to talk about. And then the last one is trace claims, quotes, images, or videos. So this one is, I think, really important when you start to see some of the sources that Adam showed earlier, where we might have a video out of context. We might not necessarily know where the information has been produced by. I don't know if you see this, and we're going to actually we'll look at an example. So I'm going to go on to the next one. All right, so we're going to look at two sources on here. I have two things. The first one, let's look at the left side of the page. And this came up on social media. I actually saw a post like this on my social media, and it was something to the effect that PBS has officially voted to dissolve itself. The propaganda machine is collapsing in real time. And then it had a news video report below it. So if we're using the SIFT technique, right? So stop, investigate. What's the next one? Fact check, right? Find better coverage or trace your claims. So we don't necessarily have computers in front of us, but let's take a look at this particular one. And what do we notice about this post on the left, about PBS? First, what kind of misinformation or disinformation do you think it might be?
Online as well, if you want to
Yeah.
type something into the chat.
And then what would
Right
you
there on the first line.
What would you do to investigate it? Any thoughts on it?
It's disinformation.
Yeah,
You go to the official CNN website.
yeah.
See that I can find that piece of information somewhere.
Yeah, so looking at the video, like looking up on CNN to see if you could find the official news report, right? Yeah, absolutely.
What's the first question to identify if this was a false connection, misleading content?
Yeah.
What was it?
Just to identify where in this particular image you could look to be able to start to see or to start to investigate what might make this credible or not credible.
I thought the first was to identify.
Do you,
this was,
do you think it's misinformation or disinformation in this particular post? Sorry, I asked two questions at once, so. So this one at first glance, and you see, okay, we've got live CNN coverage, so we could go to the CNN source and take a look at what they actually reported on. And that's a very smart thing to do, right? So go to the original content. You also, one of the things that I'm noticing is we have some incendiary language, right? So we have definitely a perspective that's being listed on here. And one of the things that once I paid attention to it, it's misleading information. So it's saying PBS has dissolved, but really the action that was reported on by CNN was not PBS. It was the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. So you took something out of context and applied a different statement to it, right? That is confusing. So even if this wasn't done maliciously, right? If somebody just misunderstood and conflated the two, PBS and Corporation for Public Broadcasting, then if people take this information and share it and share it and share it, then you see how misinformation spreads.
If you also look at the username gives you a particular perspective, perhaps. I, a non-patriot, that has some context to it as well. That you might, this particular person, if we go back and start to sift through some of their posts and start to see what kind of information they're sharing. Are they sharing information that is typically one-sided in this manner, or are they sharing information that covers both sides potentially of an issue or some aspect of culture? Then we can start to, again, make some decisions.
So we just did two of the things in that SIFT technique: stop and investigate, right? So we're paying attention to the person who's posted it, or potentially going to the original news source.
And you suggested
Yeah.
to go and then further to CNN, which would be fact finding, going in and figuring out, okay, does on the CNN website, are they talking about this and how are they framing the story?
Go
I
ahead.
was just gonna say,
Yeah.
usually those posts are in echo chambers, so
Yes,
they
They're going
cater to their audience, so it's,
yes,
those people are gonna check, this is
Yeah.
information, let me share it as fast as I can.
yes,
So for that type of information to end up in my feed, which I don't have in Twitter, but
sure,
Yeah.
yeah.
it's, So I would doubt that post definitely, but I doubt that someone from his sphere,
Yeah.
person says would
Yeah.
make that.
And the trick now is to then think about that perspective of, this wouldn't normally come onto my feed. Well, think about that now. How is your feed curated? What ends up on your feed now? And do you still, because it's on your feed and you generally agree with it, do you take the time to go through SIFT with that as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. Perhaps
Which
it's
I
more
think-
important to do it with that than it is with this.
Yeah, and so I think that's one of the things that can be a trap, is that if you have things that you assume are trustworthy coming through, then you might,
Let your guard down.
let your guard down a little bit. Yeah, absolutely. I want to take a look at the one on the right. So, new study finds eating more than one egg per week cuts Alzheimer's risk by 47%. So I will have to admit, for these, I didn't have Twitter, and I hold on. Oh,
Okay, do you
Oh. sorry. And so I didn't have X, and so I opened an account just to pull off some posts. And so this was fun. But this one, I'm gonna go to the other one. Sorry. When you looked at this particular post, it had a citation to an academic journal article on the post. And so what is your
Oh, yeah, I think
average
if you
person
click
gonna
on
do?
that-
Yeah, okay, it'll go
Click on the right, on the egg, yeah.
on the egg. Okay, cool.
I need this.
Oh, it doesn't.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, sorry.
And my computer's,
That's okay. You're doing it.
here we go. Yeah.
Okay. So it had a citation, and they even did it in APA style, right? So they pulled it properly and they put it on the post. And so what is your average consumer, or what is our student, right? What does our student think when they read something like this? So again, that SIFT technique, we stop back and we say, stop, right? And pay attention to the language that's being used. And then we investigate the source. So the source is not just the poster, right? The source is where they're stating this information came from. So I would want to take this citation and go look it up. I could do a Google Scholar search. I can take it to the library site and find the publication and look at the source itself. Stop, investigate. But I think what's really important here is that next one, which is the fact check and tracing claims, right? So what happens in some cases with disinformation is that you might have a source that someone has pulled out of context, right? So they've pulled statistics from a source, or they pulled a graph, or they've taken a finding and then they've put it into a wildly maybe inappropriate context, right? So I don't think, I haven't read this article fully, but I don't think that we can say definitively that you're going to reduce your risk of Alzheimer's by eating one or more eggs per week, right? There's a lot more to the story of how Alzheimer's works. So, but this is something that I think we need to, I gave maybe exaggerated examples, but I want us to kind of think of the technique that we want ourselves and our students to use. Comment. Yeah, tell me what you think.
Yeah, in that context, I'm coming from a psychology,
Yeah.
computer science background. It's really difficult because even large media corporations, CNN, NBC, and so on,
Yes.
they have to make the scientific information more palatable to the audience because they're not going to understand the original paper. And by doing that, sometimes it misses the point of the
Yes.
study, and it leads to something that the study did not say.
Yeah.
But that was roughly the information itself is being quote unquote dubbed down in such a way that what is being disseminated in those reliable sources of information is itself not reliable because it's not what the original study say.
Yeah.
And all of
I
that,
really
and all of that is secondary to making a television show.
Yeah.
That's what the news is, the television show.
Yeah.
That needs advertisers to make money.
And
that's
because
For-
the
for-
news cycle has become this like 24/7, they need to get constant attention, right? That is a strategy that is used to grab attention, right? They will take
Mm-hmm.
something real, a scientific study, and they will like look for what's the hook, what's going to grab the attention and gather more viewers to me. And so that is something that we have to in ourselves practice kind of healthy skepticism of what we're listening to and watching, but then also within our students as information consumers, right? So even if the study is true, is it a true scientific study, then we also have to start to teach students, okay, how do we read that study and how do we understand it in the context of the scholarly conversation and research on this topic? And that's the purpose of our work here. But I think that we have to understand that students are building that skill set, and the sometimes summarized sources can feel helpful to them, right? And they may go to the sources that are easier to read just from from all of our standpoint, I think most of our standpoint, if we're not experts in a field to be able to digest that academic journal article. Yeah.
So I'm thinking, I survey students all the time about if they read the textbook chapter.
Yes.
Which is way easier to read than a journal article.
Yes.
But like the cognitive load for them to do stuff like this,
Yes.
I don't think most of our students are gonna be doing that, right? Only the top 10%, 18% are gonna be doing that.
Taking the time to investigate. Is that what you're saying?
Or being able to read. Like, right, you would have to go find the article, then read the article, and then be able to determine if the article was in fact legit.
Yeah.
Because you can fake that article.
Yeah.
Right? And you can post it online and it looks legit.
So what's the solution, right? What's the solution? Huh.
Do it. Okay. That's the, like, you're gonna fall to the lowest effort, right? The higher effort one is gonna be much more difficult for you.
Yeah.
Maybe the right thing to do. I'm gonna go to the simpler version and I'm gonna go for the spoon feeding.
Yeah. So, oh,
Like it.
do you wanna, maybe it's a different input?
Yeah, there we go. It should be
Is
good.
this a real?
Microphone? It is a real article, yeah. Sorry.
You have to send me this, if I do an AM movie conference,
Sure.
this will fit right in.
Okay.
It's perfect.
That's funny because
It's got a great graphic, it's like.
there's the thing that
I
I
guess
say
the
the
font
still
is
show
black.
that.
Yeah.
This one, I guess.
This is the one we've been talking on.
Yeah. Let's see if we can turn off the microphone. Yeah.
There's the microphone off. There we go. So,
Okay.
So
Okay.
We're still having echo. Sorry, guys, we got an audio input change, so let's leave computer audio. Okay, that's better, right? Back, okay. Can you guys online still hear us? Give us a thumbs up. Yeah,
Yes, loud and
thank you, Marianne. So I think Eddie's raising an important question, right? So if students are not going to be prepared to do all of those steps, I would say we scaffold for them and we teach them and we help them build those skills. So scaffolding, it might be an activity that you do in your classroom where you actually work together to practice reading an academic journal article or taking a news source and following it to the original content so that you could trace the claims together as a group. So I think you're right, these skills are not easy. And that is why a lot of us do the natural thing of just kind of consuming what we read, and maybe we do have kind of our filtered information news sources, and then we absorb what comes in from those. But I think with students, we do know that they're going to be going out researching and gathering information for their classes, but then they're also going to be consuming information as individuals. And so the more that we could help them practice and build those skills, the better it is for them and for all of us, I think. Marianne shared in here. I always remind students that information literacy is a muscle that you build over time. It may be painful and slow going at first, but the more you exercise, the faster and better you get. And it's good to remind students that they might stumble at first when practicing those skills. And I think that's so true. Thank you, Marianne. And I think that's we all need to work those muscles regularly too, right? And so I think it's the purpose of the acronym or whatever strategies you apply is to, it's kind of, I don't know, when you're learning a skill, so if you're learning a musical instrument, or if you're learning how to do a technique in drawing or a sport, then you often break it down into pieces and you go through it slowly, and then you repeat it and repeat it and repeat it until it becomes more natural. And that's what we're trying to do here. Okay. All right, I'm going to take us down and now have us talk about AI. Because when we talk about media literacy and when we're thinking about misinformation and disinformation, I think Adam and I both very quickly were thinking, this conversation is one and the same with what we're thinking about evaluation of AI. We have to be critical thinkers about the information that's being generated wherever we're getting it, right? From a news source, from social media, from an AI tool. And so I put up on here something with a Google search, but you could kind of do this with any AI tool. And I think that one of the things about AI tools is they're providing an answer to a question, a summary, they're following a prompt, whatever you want them to do. But then the question is, where are they getting that information? And some AI tools do better or worse jobs at providing you a sense of where they're getting that information. This is the Google AI tool. So I was just doing a Google search, AI overview, and what it does is it gives a hyperlink where it's making a statement, it's giving you the source of whatever it says it's from. But you'll notice that not every page, every line has a link. So that was a red flag to me immediately. And then when I'm looking at all of these things, then they're of varying quality, right? If I was doing my just kind of skim through my own practice evaluation techniques, I'm looking at things like, what's the source of information? I'd probably want to know, so health with Hunter. Hunter sounds wonderful, especially if he's telling me that drinking coffee is good for me, right? So that again, looking at the sources of information and going back to them if we're using AI generated content. But I think that we want to not every right. So this is one AI tool. But if it's ChatGPT or if it's one of the other tools, Gemini or something like that, we may or may not have a source of information or citations for our information sources that are being used to generate the particular piece of content there. So I think it's, again, practicing those pieces of stopping. What's the information? Can you investigate it by either going to find what the source was and looking outside to see what kind of information does this source post? How reputable is it? Is it cited by other people? But then I think for AI generated content, a technique that I would really encourage students to do is, okay, maybe it gave you an idea, but then let's go research it in another information source that maybe is a little bit more trustworthy. Taking my claim that paper filters, right, are helping with cholesterol. I don't know if I can even make that claim. Then I would go back and actually research through a database or through Google Scholar or someplace else where maybe I could get a study or something that could give me information that could be more trustworthy.
And
Okay.
the idea too that, well, how do we have time for all of this? I mean, I seem to find 20, 30 minutes a day to be able to scroll through my internet and just zone out. Now, it's pleasurable, right? And you're taking away my pleasure instead of have to sit there and do research. But I mean, it depends on how well informed we want to be about it. There is time for us to do it because we're all sitting scrolling on our phones anyways. Take a couple extra minutes oh, let me just go to this source. Is this legit? Let me go to here. Can I corroborate it? Maybe not. Okay, I'll do that later, or put it on a list of things to investigate, or right, keep a list of things to investigate. You have an hour, you want to start to really understand a certain issue, then I can go do it. Right?
And I think the thing to keep in mind is that our information sources, regardless of whether you use social media or not, we're going to be confronted with information that we need to evaluate, from any source that we're going to, whether it's a trusted news source, right, that could get something wrong, or, doing a search through many of the tools that are available, or, social media's things that are being shared online as well. Right. Next part, I see time-wise. Mark did make a comment.
Yeah.
One problem with AI cannot go back to the original peer-reviewed primary work. These are usually licensed and need to pay to have access, which AI does not, at least in science and medicine. Yes, so that's a really good point. And so if the original, there's many layers to the problems there, right? So how are they using that content? If this AI source cannot go back to the original content, then we need to also practice showing students how to take a citation and go find that original content themselves, right? So that's something they can come right to a librarian and say, hey, I found this. I'm trying to see if it's real. And we can help them search and find the source, original source, get a copy of the original source if they need it.
When you said earlier about the trouble with students not doing the reading, that's one of the problems, of course, that I've been trying to overcome as well. And I've started to introduce short reading quizzes that that test them on information there in the classroom, but also going through and designing assignments where I provide them with certain sources, and then I have them choose, 3 or 4 quotes. Okay, then write me a response to this answer using 1 or 2 of these quotes, and then include the quote in your answer, cite it appropriately. Go to the end of your written assignment, write out the citation at the end. It's showing them how to do a citation. Now, for your final paper, you have to go and find legitimate sources. Give me the accurate page numbers. I give them a text and I say, okay, now give me source with the page numbers. The one thing ChatGPT finds troublesome as well is giving you accurate page numbers. of certain types of text, especially some of the texts that I use that are maybe a little bit more obscure. So that kind of stuff too is it gets them in the reading, it introduces them to citations, and it gets them also thinking, okay, how do I make citations for, and cite work that I want, because that's important in academia to think about and lean on the work of others to support your own analysis. So we can just start to finish up here with the last 10 minutes or so. I just wanted to throw about some information with the last PD that we did on media literacy. I've borrowed some of that information. I've introduced a couple more pieces of information here as well, just to kind of think about and get us to keep thinking about how not only potentially we use these tools, but of course how our students are using them. And there's some information that is taken from some different sources here. I have it on the citation page at the end. This is from Pew Research. Overall, just about half of US adults say they sometimes get news from social media. Of course, 86% of US adults are often at least sometimes getting news from a digital device. So half of their news is coming from something like social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, etc. 86% of adults are getting it from some sort of a digital device. There's another statistic that was in there that I harped on last time. It's 99% of people use the internet. 100% of people use it here on our campus because we require everybody to use it. Not only do we require the staff, teachers, but also students to get Canvas pages and to use the internet. Everybody has to use the internet here on our campus. And as they're using it, our students, at least 50% of them are getting news and information from social media. At least 80% of them are getting some sort of news from some sort of digital device like their phone or a computer or etc. Mostly their phones and computers. So to think about the idea of media literacy, not just at this level, I was talking with Emily and some other colleagues the other day. You're keeping up around about media literacy in the news. In Finland right now, they're implementing legislation to make sure that as early as 2 and 3 years old, students in kindergarten and preschool are getting media literacy training to better understand how media works. We're trying here at this level, we're honestly a little bit too late. If they're getting it by the time they get to us, they've been inundated with it for a long period of time, like many of us already are. And so it becomes that much harder to start to break through some of those cycles and break through some of the different habits that are being that have been learned, because this is like we've been talking about, it's a learned technology. So Stanford neuroscientists looked through 30 million social media posts from 2011 to 2020, and they found news sources that posted twice as much negative news as positive, or that news sources posted twice as much negative news as positive. So twice as much news, negative news, is being posted as is positive news. And Emily made mention of that. That's something I talk about in my media classes. We talk about infotainment technology, or infotainment television, excuse me, infotainment television. Infotainment is stuff like Fox News, CNN, and MSNBC. That is part news and part entertainment, and they're designed specifically in that way. They specifically design it so that you're on this roller coaster of up and down. You're getting good news, bad news, good news, bad news. You're constantly in this kind of this roller coaster of emotions as you're watching it. And again, it's a television show that is meant to get you to spend money on it by watching it so they can get advertising dollars and so on. So they're purposefully putting that out to, of course, gain our attention. And as we check these types of technologies, our phones, computers, etc., that's what they're giving us, what they want us to consume. Sources are likely skewed right or left. Those are more likely to be shared. So something that's partisan is going to be shared more likely than something that's going to talk about, hey, let's look at both sides of the issue. So, and according to the American Psychological Association, exposure to misinformation increases the odds that people will believe it, and which in turn increases the odds that they will spread it. And it goes back to the idea of the truth, post-truth, and what kind of a state are we living in when it comes to the truth and what we believe. So to finish up with just some simple strategies, and these are some things that are kind of boilerplate, some of them, but I think during the course of this discussion, we've come to a number of different points that are not on this list that are important for us to think about, namely looking into ourselves, thinking about our own habits, our own consumption, thinking about how we might implement some of these strategies like the SIFT method into curriculum or into our daily lives. Be thinking about, of course, things like PD offerings. One of the things I think that is important is that we need to start requiring more courses in media literacy. And not just in spaces like mass media or film or art history, but also in other places on campus. There's an agricultural marketing course that's very much oriented in the space of media literacy, that we should have students who are going through that particular aspect of agriculture studies should probably have to take that course. We should probably start taking out the courses like anthropology of religion, art history, agricultural marketing, mass media, bundling those together, making students have to take those courses in some of the same ways that we have to take English and mathematics. Because if other places around the world in similarly advanced countries are thinking about doing this with 2- and 3-year-olds, it stands to reason that if they're going to come through Cosumnes River College, they should be well-informed persons about the world around them, which means more than just history, art, or history, math, and science, and English. Of course, also engaging in further discussions, working with librarians like Emily here and all the wonderful people at the library. We have some guides, some research guides as well that are helpful and handy that you can get there too, the research guides online. So.
And we're happy to add more resources too. I think one of the things that we want to do is kind of build and continue these conversations on campus. So we're really looking for more people who are interested in trying to bring more awareness to media literacy, AI literacy, digital literacy, kind of that set of critical thinking skills that we need to have and we need to cultivate, both for ourselves and also for our students. And so if you're interested, if you have resources, if you have suggestions, we really want to hear from other faculty too and staff too.
And James on the online there makes a great point. He says it's hard to spread misinformation you haven't been exposed to. Sort of the way I'm reading that is the idea of we don't know what we don't know, right? If we don't know it's misinformation, then we don't necessarily know we've been exposed to it. So it's incumbent upon us to inform ourselves, to read and to understand those things that we are consuming on more advanced levels, especially if we're doing it as a pastime or around our house on our phones or what have you.
Mark has his hand up. Go ahead, Mark.
Okay.
I noticed even with chemistry, which is what I instruct, our textbooks, zero cost textbooks, most of them, or at least the chemistry, are not cited correctly. When they make claims or present concepts, everything should be cited for us to start having our feet on the ground, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it probably depends on what your textbook is, but that might be something that we want to follow up on because one of the things specifically with LibreText, Andy is trying to put in some like evaluation and not edit. I don't know the word I'm trying to look for, but like
Attributation.
Yeah, quality control for lack of a better word. So Mark, maybe we need to take a look at that.
Well, there's two aspects. One is attributing the work to the authors, and the other is to cite the claims and statements made in the work, and which is not done almost at all with textbooks. It's really weird.
And I've seen that too, in reference sources, right? So we might see kind of an old school encyclopedia that has a summary statement and it's not citing any of the information, which drives me crazy too. I think the more we can model the correct way to do things and incorporate that into our resources that we're providing to students, the better. So yeah.
But it's kind of like Wikipedia article is only as good as the sources it cites to support the article, right?
Yeah. Any information, only as good as the sources it cites.
There's a QR code as well for feedback to help us. Of course, part of the us getting better and being more informed and more media literate is to share our thoughts and our perspectives. So we welcome your feedback about this presentation and about media literacy in general. If you want to get a hold of either of us through the QR code or just through hanging out on campus, want to email us, etc. We'll more than happy to talk more about this with everybody.
Thank you. Thank you
Are
very
you able
much
to
for
do
your
that?
time today. I didn't paste it properly.
Thank you.
I
Here, let me see if I
appreciate
can
it.
paste it here.
I
Oops.
can stop the recording if anybody feels like chatting or sharing anything else.
Yeah, that's cool.